The July real estate numbers are in for Belleville, Quinte West, and Prince Edward County, and we saw some encouraging signs across some parts of the Bay of Quinte, but conditions were very different depending on where you looked. Starting with Belleville, the median sale price was $510,000 compared to $531,000 last July. Prices have remained remarkably consistent over the past 5 years. Since 2021, the median sale price has ranged between $510,000 and $531,000. Showing that the summer market, especially July, has been surprisingly flat despite major changes in interest rate and general market conditions. There were 81 sales in Belleville in July compared to 86 last year, and while that's a slight year-over-year decline, sales volume was actually higher than it was in previous Julys from 2021 to 2024. Active listings declined slightly to 347 compared to 358 last year. And despite the year-over-year decline in active listings, this remains one of the highest Julys we've seen in the last decade in Belleville. Months of inventory remained unchanged from last year, sitting at 4.3 months, a balanced market. New listings were slightly above historical averages, but lower than the number we've seen in the last 2 years. Overall, Belleville was relatively balanced throughout July. Prices were stable, inventory actually declined, and sales activity held up reasonably well. Moving over to Quinte West, the median sale price was $487,000 compared to $505,000 last July. Much like Belleville, median prices in Quinte West have remained relatively flat throughout July since 2021. They've ranged from $485,000 to $515,000. However, the inventory tells a different story. There were 170 new listings in July in Quinte West, a 10-year high well above the previous recorded 10-year high last year of 149 new listings. Active listings increased substantially to 410 compared to 325 last year, also reaching a 10-year high by a long shot. At the same time, only 53 properties sold compared to 63 last year, actually a 10-year low in transaction volume. And because of this imbalance, we saw months of inventory increase from 5.3 months to 7.8 months. All in all, Quinte West, definitely the softest of the three markets. Inventory continues to build with lackluster transaction volume. Despite that, median sale price has held relatively firm, but if this trend continues, that likely won't last for long. Finally, Prince Edward County, the median sale price was $623,000 compared to $660 last year. As we saw in Belleville and Quinte West, July prices in the county have remained relatively flat since 2021, despite more volatility in 22 and 23. There were 152 new listings compared to 188 last year, which represents a 3-year low for July new listings in Prince Edward County. Despite the decline in new properties coming to the market, inventory continues to build in Prince Edward County. There's currently 550 active listings compared to 531 last July, and 10-year highs of inventory levels continues to be the norm in Prince Edward County. The positive development was the improvement in transaction volume in July. Sales increased meaningfully, providing some encouraging news for Prince Edward County sellers. Overall, July has been one of the more optimistic months I've seen throughout 2026 for Belleville and Prince Edward County. We saw stronger transaction activity, fewer new listings come to market, and some improvement in inventory levels when it pertains to months of inventory. Quinte West is the exception this month, with fewer sales, higher amounts of active listings, and growing months of inventory. It's important to note that the market hasn't really followed traditional seasonality over the past few years. Economic uncertainty and global volatility has influenced buyer and seller behavior more than traditional seasonality has. So 1 month definitely doesn't establish a long-term trend. For sellers in Belleville and Prince Edward County, the July numbers are slightly encouraging. And for buyers in Quinte West, higher inventory levels and less buyers in the market mean more negotiating power for you. That's it for this week's real estate update. Thanks for watching and see you next week.